Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for a Green Sports Alliance webinar, Compost Slam Dunk, Turning Food Waste into a Winning Strategy. I'm Katie, the manager of events and operations for the Green Sports Alliance. For those who don't know us, we are a driver of environmental and social responsibility across the global sports industry. We do this by releasing educational tools like webinars and playbooks. We help create more sustainable events, and we host our own events. One of them is right around the corner. It is the Reuse Symposium on March 18th. Whether you're a concessionaire, beverage provider, venue operator, or anyone in between, we invite you to come join us in Portland on March 18th. And you can scan the QR code to see the programming. One of our panelists will be live speaking on stage. And you can come see the Colorado Rockies, the San Jose Sharks, Columbia University, and many more. You can register here with the QR code. And of course, our annual summit. We will be in beautiful Miami from June 10th to 12th. Join us at the Intercontinental for 2 days of everything you want to know to create more sustainable sports. You have 2 days left at early supporter pricing, which is 50% off. I highly suggest getting that rate versus the full 100%. And you can book at our discounted hotel rate as well at the Intercontinental. We hope to see you there. And you can email me if you think you have something to say on stage, your challenges or success stories that you want to share with this very niche industry. And I'll put my email in the chat in a second. And before I introduce you to our panelists, if you have any questions, there's a Q&A box next to your chat that you can type in questions here, and we will likely get to them at the end, or they'll get answered as we go. And I'm happy to introduce you to our panelists today. They're Green Sports Alliance members. Denali, one of the nation's leaders in organic recycling. We have NASCAR and Levy. They're here today to share their perspectives on leveraging composting as a strategy towards diversion of food waste from landfill and enhancing your sustainability footprint. But before I hand it off, they want to know a little bit more about our audience. So I'm going to put out a poll right now. The first one, you can go ahead and answer. You should see it on your screen now. They want to know what industry you work in. Sports venues and facilities, nonprofits, consulting, sustainability consulting, sustainable products or technologies, education like the collegiate space or government, food and beverage, construction and architecture, or other. Thank you everyone for answering so quickly. Looks like everyone almost has their answers in. All right. Looks like most of you are in sports venues and facilities. Lots of consultants, sustainability products or technologies, some F&B. I'm not sure if this is going to pop up right now. Share results. Beautiful. Looks like everyone can see it now. Panelists take notes. And we have one more question to ask because we would like to know kind of where your education level lies in terms of compost. So one second. If you can just answer this one as well. So how would you rate your education level as a composter? For anyone who doesn't know what composting is, if you see your landfill bin, sometimes you have a recycle bin, sometimes you have a compost bin. Compost is what you can put all of your food waste in, as well as some other things like your grass clippings. You can put newspaper, you can put egg cartons, you can put some things are labeled compostable, depending on where you are in the US. You can throw that in there as well. All right, we'll end poll, share results. Looks like most of you are intermediates. We have some experts on here, fantastic, and a lot of beginners. So panelists, just take that into consideration when sharing about compost. Okay, and I'm going to pass it to Layla from Denali.
Thank you so much, Katie. Good morning, good afternoon for our East Coasters. Thank you for being here today. We're super excited about the attendance on a call like this. As we gather here today, did you all know that nearly 40% of food produced globally is lost or wasted? And I'd be willing to bet that many of you are here today because you, in your respective sports and entertainment venue especially, you see this in action every single day. Maybe you feel personally compelled to do something about it. Maybe you're getting pressure from teams, from management, from investors, from peers, or even from fans demanding that you do something about it. Maybe you live in a geography that's mandating it. We meet people all the time that are calling us because they said the state of New York has put a mandate out, Chicago has put a mandate out, so on and so forth. Either they're directly mandating it or inadvertently through massive increases at landfill prices. But whatever your reason for being on this call and interested in doing the right thing, I know that it's really daunting to bring this to life. And there's a lot to know, a lot of options, and a lot of potential investments to make. And it's hard to know which one's the right one. And the hurdles seem very high. Well, today, collectively, we want to explore how to turn this staggering 40% statistic into a winning strategy for you. So our goal today is simple and really threefold. One is to inspire you to take whatever is the next step in your sustainability journey. Some of you are extremely far along, and we can tell that from the way you guys have responded to that last poll. Some of you are just thinking about it and you want to do something, but you're not entirely sure where to start. Two is to educate you on how to do that next step easily and effectively as related to food waste. And three, to let our collective stories between Denali, NASCAR, and Levy to share those stories, experiences, and then offer our partnership to you as you get started in whatever you want to do next. So my name is Leila Lakhani Ali. I'm the Senior Vice President of Sales at Denali, and I lead our retail business as well as what we call our emerging segments business, which I'm proud to say has seen pretty exponential demand coming from sports and entertainment. Emerging segments are the industries that, didn't 20 years ago engage in things like composting. But today, they're all at different, speeds of adoption, and sports and entertainment is at the forefront of that. I'm thrilled to be here with you today, particularly to share the stage with folks from NASCAR and Levy. These guys have been amazing partners, and because this topic is too important to ignore and a lot easier to execute than you might think going into it. So who are we at Denali? We're the nation's largest organics recycler, and our mantra is waste should not be wasted. So we're super excited to be part of your learning journey today. And before we dive in, I want to assure everyone who might be worried about this that despite our focus on mountainous challenges like food waste, we are not going to take President Trump's recommendation about renaming Denali to McKinley, at least not today. So diving into the next slide, Katie. I won't spend a ton of time, sharing a lot more about Denali because I feel like many of you already know who we are. For those of you who don't, we'd love to connect with you after this call. But let me share just a little bit. We're the nation's largest recycler. We have infrastructure, as you can see on the screen, that is across the nation, and we've spent a lot of time building that infrastructure. We have that mantra I talked about of waste should not be wasted, and we really want to partner with anybody who has a similar kind of mindset. Really noteworthy is this bullet at the very bottom of the page. In the last few years, Denali has invested significantly across the country in what's called deep pack technology. Some of you are super familiar with this, others of you don't know what it is. One of the largest barriers to why people don't do composting is they're worried about all the other stuff that might get into it, whether that's contamination, whether it's the thought process of having to separate the organic waste from the non-organic waste. And that Deepak technology is effectively a machine that takes all of your organic matter, organic food waste, and any contaminants that might get in there outside of basically glass and metal, and it separates it for you. So the barrier to want to, to do this and have that as a hurdle is going away with technology like this. And we've built that infrastructure largely out over the US. We have most metro cities covered and then a handful more coming this year. Going into the next slide. So this is our bread and butter. It's what we do every single day. And we, by the way, do it to the tune of about 16 billion pounds of organic waste that we recycle annually. We take these organic inputs like food waste from stadiums, arenas, you name it, and turn it into outputs like animal feed, like fertilizer, and like biodiesel. So it's the circular economy at work all day long, every day. So now let's get into the meat of this. And I always have Simon Sinek in my head of start with the why. So why should you do food waste recycling? I'll keep this part brief because I suspect that this room already feels this why every single day. And that's why you're in attendance at this webinar. And that's why we have record numbers signing up to come to this. I mentioned one of my roles at Denali is to lead the sports and entertainment space. This is by far the space that we're seeing the greatest new momentum happening. And the statistics back up the why. It's really pretty simple. Sports sustainability improves both your business and the planet. And people didn't always think that way. So there are three big whys that should inspire you to move forward in this journey of yours. One, in sports and entertainment, you have a lot of eyes on you. You are the hubs where communities gather, where they celebrate. You have an organizational purpose in communities. And that purpose is important and comes with organizational responsibility. Two, fans, players, investors, you name it, are demanding this. It went from being a passive interest of some to being a strategic imperative of many. 86% of organizations have, including venues, have set long-term carbon emission or energy reduction goals. That's a massive number. That doesn't mean those goals have yet translated into actions to support those goals. So we want to help you, all of us on this call, in any way that we possibly can. Many sports and entertainment facilities are setting pretty audacious goals by participating in the United Nations Sports for Climate Action Initiative, and that aims to have emissions halved by 2030 and net zero operations by 2040. Those are some pretty amazing goals, and we'd love to help you make it come to life. And lastly, quite simply, you really can't afford to be left behind. 78% of US consumers say that sustainability is important to them, and it's driving that demand for eco-friendly practices in sports and entertainment. Consumers are 4 to 6 times more likely to trust, buy, or champion brands that they believe have a strong organizational purpose and that contribute to sustainability. So that's a big deal. If you think about those numbers, and if you think about the generations, Generation X, Generation Y is a lot more aware and a lot more active. Generation Z and Generation Alpha, they vote with their dollars, right? They want brands that support the beliefs that they have. And it's fundamentally important that if you want to be a brand that appeals to these audiences, it's important to get on this bus. All right, so you've bought into the why and you wonder now, where do you start? How can it work? What does the process look like end to end? Some of you have tried to activate this, but something didn't work as you were hoping it would. And I have a lot of folks that I speak to regularly who say, we were doing some version of this pre-COVID and COVID basically made it fall apart. And we're not really sure how to get started again. So you're at different parts of your journey. I'd like to have a short video play from Denali. It's about 1.5 minutes, and it'll give you a good kind of Cliff Notes version of the end-to-end view of what we do, how we do it. Now, Denali is one company in the mix of many companies that focus on this, albeit we're the largest player. But this will give you a sense of this is how easy it could be, and this is where the process starts and where the process ends. And there are many others that try to achieve the same end of a circular economy, but maybe go about it slightly differently. And those are also great options for you. So hopefully you'll glean from this how easy and investment free it'll be.
Don't worry, the sound will come on after the first 30 seconds or so.
Thanks, Katie.
Denali sees unused food as a resource, not waste. We work with thousands of customers to recycle food that can't be sold or donated, from grocery stores and food manufacturers to restaurants, schools, and more. Our process starts with collection. We work with your team to train associates on what can and cannot be recycled. We can accept meat, dairy, produce, liquids, and dry goods, including packaged items. Next, our nationwide fleet collects the food, cleans the collection bins, gathers data, and takes the food to a recycling facility. There, the food is depackaged, separating the organic material from packaging materials such as metal, plastic, and cardboard. This produces a clean stream of organic material that's rich in nutrients, and that material can be used to make animal feed for more sustainable agriculture. Or that material can be used to make compost that enhances soil and enriches your garden. It may even be used to make the energy that powers your home. That's the circular economy in action. Let's work together to make a difference.
Layla, you're muted.
Haha, I was saying brilliant things on mute. Thank you. I said there's one question that came out of the chat question and answer thread, and I want to handle it live. Simone, great question. What do we do with the materials that come out of the depacker? We recycle everything that we can. So what comes out of the depacker is all the organic matter goes into the piles that you saw in the video. Anything that cannot go in there and that goes through the screener is put aside and categorized by different types of components. And anything that we can recycle that comes out of that, we absolutely recycle. Our goal is minimize what goes into the landfill, so that absolutely adheres in this process. Awesome question. All right, let me now go to where do you start, right? One of the things that we hear all the time, and you'll hear all of my fellow panelists talk about this as well, is don't let perfect be the enemy of good here. And so in terms of, you can start with back of the house, you can, that's probably the easiest place to start, is the back of the house food waste. All you need to really get started is you need the buy-in, right? You need the buy-in to get that moving forward. You create certain containers that are designated for compost, and you need training. And we provide that training to you. Pretty simple. Step one of this is pretty simple. Here, you don't need to have depack. In fact, Esther will talk about how NASCAR did not go down the depack route, and they do the separation themselves. This is an option available to you and not a necessity in the back of the house. It does make it easier, but it's very doable even without it. It is the easy button. So back of the house food waste is the easy button. It's the place where all of you should start. So as opposed to doing nothing, this is the something you can do, and you can do it very easily. And many folks even take that a step further. And if they have many vendors in their building, they also get the vendors to participate. So not just the main kitchen, but also the vendors can be a part of this. So that'll be an easy button to get rolling if you're not already rolling. Next step, people don't believe this is an easy button, but I would also call this an easy button. And I'm going to call it post-consumer waste that is handled by trained staff. So here's what I mean by this. Many of you have private areas, you have suites that hold facilities, all of this type of stuff. All of these types of spaces typically have, buffet waste, lots and lots of food that's laid out for the people that are in that space. And much of that food ends up going straight into the garbage because it doesn't all get consumed. And you have to have a certain volume out there. You're not going to be down to the last bare bones. So inevitably that ends up being remaining. And those kinds of things automatically can add significant volumes to your material that's being composted as opposed to going into the landfill. And because trained personnel is handling it, you can easily take all of that buffet waste and put it into the compost bin versus the landfill bin. And it's very easy to do with trained personnel. It does not tend to have a ton of contamination in there. So depack is valuable, but not an essential even here. Now you get into the true front of the house food waste. It is not impossible. We have many venues across the country that are doing it, but it requires more attention, it requires more thought process, and it requires possibly some process changes. So you have to figure out, how do we get past it? I mentioned that the depacker can handle a lot. It can handle pretty much most things that are not metal or glass. But do you want to send a ton of food waste that's 90%, non-organic through a depacker? And so then you start thinking about, does that make economic sense? Does that make sustainability sense? All of these types of things. So you don't theoretically want to do that. You want to have that waste stream be as clean as possible and then let the depacker do the rest of the work. So there's some solution that needs to be in place to avoid that mass contamination that you might find in front of the house, right? Whether that is tremendous amounts of education. We have venues that are like, look, we have a lot of volunteers working our events. We can literally have volunteers all over the place helping people, helping direct people on which bins to use for what type of stuff. So that could be a potential solution. There is a ton of places, the Coliseum in LA that we saw when we were at the last Green Sports Alliance Summit. Live Nation does this. There's many folks that have wonderful sorting processes and have built this into their mold to have sorting happening of all the trash. If you have the space to do that, if you can make something like that happen, that is so optimal. And between a combination of these things, whatever is residual, the DPAC can answer and be the solution for. So it really, there's multiple types of ways to go after it. And it would be a deeper conversation on what is available in terms of your space, in terms of your labor available, and what type of waste are you getting? How much contamination do you expect? And then I'll touch very briefly on compostables. And this ends up being a very big topic that could be a webinar in and of itself, because it's a heavy discussion with lots of nuances to it. Now, if somebody wants to go to zero waste or get closer to a zero waste scenario, they often invest in compostables. Now, first thing, I'll give a nod to the CMA. The CMA has an amazing website. It has all kinds of filters on there, and it's kind of like an Expedia for figuring out which kind of compostable ware will work with different kinds of machines that your food waste might be going to. So it would be really great. You can go in there and kind of pick and choose, and it'll give you literally products that you can use in your building. Now, many of us have heard the conversation on most compostable ware does not break down at the same rate as food waste does. So will it always go into that same stream as your food waste? Not always. So our intent is, when it can, it does. When it cannot, can we recycle it in some other way and handle it in some other way? And so we do our best in these scenarios, and the CMA recommendations will go a long way in terms of getting you guys started on that. The good thing with the DPAC solution is, even if you didn't have compostable ware, even if you just had, non-compostable ware, it doesn't stop you from doing the right thing in terms of composting, because the machine will be able to separate it out. You just have to think through volumes, and are you giving someone like Denali a ton of non-organic material, or are you giving mostly organic material with some littering of non-organic matter? So lots of things to think about. My recommendation is coming back to the don't let perfect be the enemy of good. Use the crawl, walk, run method. And then, just do something. Something is better than nothing in this scenario. And there are plenty of folks, whether it's Denali, whether it's many of the sustainability consulting folks that are on the line today, that could be really amazing partners in helping you think through this and figure out what are the right ways to do this. I'd like to thank you for your time from my end and pass it over to my friend and colleague, Esther Fonseca Patriarco. I hope I pronounced that right, Esther, from NASCAR, who's been incredible to be on this journey with her and Riley Nelson. I'd like to invite her to share their journey from ideation to execution on composting food waste at the NASCAR Cup races. And they started this last year, I believe. All yours, Esther.
Thank you so much, Leila. Hi, everyone. You got it right. Yeah, it's Esther Fonseca Patriarco. I'm a sustainability manager at NASCAR, and one of my responsibilities is implementing greener events, which is no easy feat. And to help convey that, I want to ask you to first imagine something. Imagine feeding everyone attending the Super Bowl. That's around 60,000 people, a lot of mouths to feed. Now, instead of a single event, imagine doing that 36 times in a season. That's the scale of our event. So different from stadiums and arenas that can host around 30 to 6,000 people, a NASCAR race weekend ranges from 40 to 150,000 attendees. And NASCAR isn't just one event in one place. Every weekend, we are moving an entire operation, equipment, cars, thousands of people to a new location, hosting what is essentially a Super Bowl-sized event at a different track. So this is a massive logistical challenge, and waste management is a big part of it. At NASCAR, we have a goal to achieve net zero operating emissions by 2035. And although waste management isn't a part of our operating emissions, we have the target to recycle at all of our tracks. And when we look into recycling, we're looking at waste diversion overall, not only recycling bottles, cans, cardboard, but also food recycling. Our events can generate an average of 5,000 pounds of food waste. And when we're talking about food waste here, this is food that cannot be donated. So we're talking about vegetable chops, meat scraps. So back of house composting is a big opportunity for us because before meals even reach the fans, the kitchens are where most food scraps happen. And we knew that if we wanted to make a positive impact on our events, we had to consider food recycling. Instead of sending all of that to the landfill and generating methane, which is one of the most powerful greenhouse gases, we had the opportunity to essentially return that material to nature and give it an actually sustainable use in form of compost. So here's the key to our success. One of our biggest challenges was consistency. NASCAR owns multiple racetracks, and each has a different layout, different kitchen setup, different waste systems. To make composting across all of them, we needed the right partners. Levy is our food concessionaire and made this possible by bringing standardized approach, and they operate at all of NASCAR owned tracks, which meant we could introduce the same composting system across our locations. And Denali allowed us to scale the program. Local composting was our first step, but having a national partner gave us the ability to keep things consistent and grow the efforts across our season. And these collaborations aren't just about logistics. They were about educating staff, getting them used to this concept, getting everyone on board with making composting work. How we made this work. So in 24, we started composting at a couple, we started piloting back of house composting at a couple of our tracks. We worked with a couple of local vendors, and that's when Denali came to our radar. They have a national footprint and allowed us to take the program nationwide. And it was so easy to work with Denali. They guided us through the whole process. Our team was only hands-on in the beginning with the legal pieces, getting everyone together, but we didn't even need to be at the tracks. Denali was working directly with the chefs and they trained them. And because Levy is also committed to sustainability, we saw the genuine commitment of the chefs and the staff behind it. One of my favorite examples comes from this year's Daytona 500. Our team walked into the kitchens and saw signs by Levy chefs. Katie, can you help share that? So it's basically saying that if you throw anything other than food here, they're going to have to dumpster dive to fix it. So like that's the level of dedication we're seeing. The chefs aren't just following a composting program, they are owning the program. And because of that, we're able to avoid contamination. Leila mentioned earlier the deep pack technology, and there are a lot of use cases where it makes sense and it's necessary, especially if you're doing front of house, but in our situation, we don't require it. And that is because we are sorting at the source. So the chefs and Navy staff are truly beginning at the beginning of this chain. They're watching everything that goes into the bins. They are providing feedback about the bin location so we can keep improving the process. And another unexpected win that we had is that our workspaces are cleaner now. And that's because food scraps go straight into the compost bins instead of the regular trash. So our kitchens and operation areas are cleaner. There's no food waste sitting in trash cans anymore. So there's no bad smells, no pests. Our team was standing by the compost bins at the Daytona 500 and there was no smell. And there's also this bin full of some sort of organic liquid. And if you were to put that in the garbage chute, you would have been caught in, Florida temperatures that would have smelled and like required probably some special cleaning. So you see that composting at the back of house makes a better working environment for everyone. And I know composting at NASCAR events isn't the same as composting at a stadium. I would say that our situation is even harder because you're basically a moving circus. As I mentioned, we're moving equipment, right? We have different staff at each track, and we couldn't have done that without Levy and without Denali. We estimate that this year we are going to compost nearly 80,000 pounds of food waste together. And we know that if we can make food recycling work at this scale in this sport, then anyone really can. So I want to hand it off to Mary McCarthy and Chef Mac with Levy. And they're going to share more about the operations and how this initiative is done in the kitchens.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Esther. Really grateful to be able to participate in this webinar with you all. I'm going to just provide a little bit of context on the why composting is so important for Levy. But then Chef and I are going to have a little bit of a conversation to really get into the details. Our culinary teams are really the muscle behind these successful programs and taking the lead on that execution. So we'll talk a little bit about what that actually looks like on the ground. To start off with, I want to say, as a food and beverage company, food waste reduction is our #1 priority. We have a holistic sustainability strategy, but anything else we do on sustainable sourcing or plant-forward menus, if that food is being thrown out, we've missed the mark. And so it's really been our top focus from a sustainability perspective. We have a goal to reduce food waste by 50% by 2030. I think that's one of the other points I want to emphasize is while composting is this incredible solution for diverting food waste once it's generated, we as a food company have to start with reduction efforts, right? We want to minimize overproduction wherever possible. Now, if we're being honest, when we're talking about the scale of a Daytona 500 or some of the other large events we run, some overproduction is going to happen. It's a little bit inevitable. And so we want to have strategies in place to be able to divert that overproduction as much as possible. Layla mentioned this already, but we really prioritize food donation as that first port of call. So any opportunity that we have to rescue that overproduced food that is safe to be donated, we will. Within the NASCAR portfolio that Levy operates, last year we donated over 11,000 pounds of food. So that's what we try and do first. Anything that is safe to donate, we want to get to our community members in need. And then after we've passed that filter, that's when we turn to things like compost. And of course, the other thing that's going into those compost waste streams are what we consider unavoidable food waste, things like banana peels or eggshells, avocado pits, things our culinary teams couldn't reduce through any kind of concerted behavior change effort. So the other thing that I want to kind of emphasize is the why this is so important for Levy. Like I said, it's the foundation of all of our sustainability strategies. Layla shared a couple of great stats about how important food waste reduction is. But the one that I always like to share with our teams is that globally, if food waste were a country, it would be the third largest greenhouse gas emitter behind the United States and China. So when we look at opportunities to try and address climate change, in my opinion, food waste reduction is just a no-brainer. It has a huge sustainability impact, but it also has an economic benefit, right? If we can be more efficient with our food, that's good for our business. And so we'll take all of those reasons to reduce food waste. The final reason, in addition to what Layla and Esther shared about why it's important, is that it really matters to our team members. It weighs heavy on our team members' hearts if they have to throw food out. It's something they really feel. And so I feel like my job, and I'm sure Chef feels this to a certain degree, is to give them the tools and strategies to be able to do the right thing, right? My job is to make that as easy as possible for them. And in an operation as complex and multifaceted, we'll say, as the NASCAR operation, moving locations weekend after weekend, having a national partner like Denali really does help with that. So I guess the last, I want to kind of turn to you now, Chef Mock. Thank you for joining us. I was really excited to get your kind of expertise on the execution side of things. I remember when we were first coming to you in our special events division, and I, as many sustainability practitioners on this call can probably relate to, I was geared up. I was ready to convince you. I had all of my rationale for how important this was and how we were going to make it easier. And your response really surprised me. You said, Mary, yeah, we can do this, no problem. And it felt as easy as that. And so tell me a little bit about what made you feel so confident that even within the operations as complex as NASCAR's, we could deliver on implementing composting at scale.
Thanks, Mary, and thanks, group, for having me on. I really appreciate this. So really, as we know, sports and entertainment in general is so complex, so many different layers, right? And bringing this program into NASCAR at a different level of complexity, I found it as a challenge that I wanted to be part of, right? First and foremost, let's save the planet. I think we're all on board these days of doing the right things to make good decisions on how we're going to put our best foot forward. The number one reason why I knew this was going to be easy is because of the leadership that I have in place. And as you've seen, that Esther had put that sign up with my regional chef down in the market down there, was very passionate behind the program, right? First and foremost, Denali put the tools, the systems, everything in place for us to where it was so simple. It's just a matter of us executing. But I have a passionate leader, and it started with him. And then as we know that kind of, builds to the next group, and as it starts going. And so it really just caught on really quickly, but I knew I had the right leadership in place to execute the program. And two, we know it's an initiative that our partners are going after, and most importantly, we're going after. I mean, I said this years ago that, especially those who are on the call that are in sports entertainment, I said, you know what, yes, I'm in sports business, but I'm also in the waste business because there's quite a bit of it. The complexity piece behind it, I knew that it was already a complex business, so why not add another layer? Because all it is just putting it into the systems that are already in place.
Yeah, wonderful. I feel so grateful to have the culinary leadership that we do to be able to really just take ownership of this. And I think once they feel empowered to do the right thing, they're really motivated. And I also sent some of that, you didn't quite say this, but some of the competition between the different teams, once they got it started, it felt like everyone got really excited about it. That being said, we know adopting new programs isn't always perfect, right? So what were some of the challenges? What went wrong in this first year of trying to bring this composting effort to scale?
Good question. I remember when we first kicked it off, we said, Chef, can you do it? I said, hey, if NASCAR can do it, anybody can do it. And that's not a blow to us as a sports group. It's because it's so complex compared to anything else out there. Sometimes food exchange hands 8 to 10 times before it gets to its final destination. And really the waste starts when the deliveries show up, right? From the cardboard to spoiled food to what do we do with that, to where we break it open and then put it in walk-ins. Then we start the production piece. And then in most facilities with NASCAR, it's, production starts in the main kitchen. Then it gets, broken down by wherever part of the property it's going to go to. And that can land on anywhere from 8 to 10 different firing pads. And then it takes 2 or 3 hands to exchange before it even gets to that destination. And then once that destination, it gets there, you're firing up the food. And then you still have layers of waste, even though it's already trayed up and it's getting fired. So we have the waste component there. What, looking at all those layers of complexity, I was thinking to myself, how are we going to do this? I know I committed to it, but how are we going to do this? So it was a matter of just the, systems, the trainings, the standing over the shoulders. This is waste. This is clean waste. This is dirty waste, really explaining it over and over again. And it caught on really quicker than what I thought it was going to be. And the buy-in was really good there too, because first and foremost, racing teams are like family members, right? They travel from city to city. They understand. So it's not like a new team you're working with all the time. So I felt confident they can pull it off. The complex part is, in our business, we work with a lot of temp agencies, right? So working with those staff members, those temporary staff members was the biggest challenge, right? So what I found it to be a good piece was, let's get in front of it before those individuals would show up. Let's talk to the temp agencies and say, hey, this is a sustainability program that we have in place, and we want you to buy into it if you want us to use your individuals. So not only do we work on staying compliant with sanitation, we stay compliant with the sustainability piece as well. So staying ahead of that really helped out. And really, I tell you, folks, if you can build a kitchen in the middle of the dirt, in the middle of the woods where there's nothing around you, and that's what I mean by if NASCAR can do it, anyone can do it.
Yeah, these are difficult sites to be able to operate at, let alone implement composting. And I think one of the things I love about what you just shared, Chef, is, when I think about making a sustainability program successful at a given venue, you need all stakeholders pulling in the same direction, right? If you don't have the venue operator, the janitorial or custodial team, the food and beverage service provider, you need everyone pulling in the same direction. And those conditions were in place for the purposes of this program that we're talking about. But then even within Levy, right? All of those chains from receiving the food through to the main kitchen, through to all the different distribution points, and having that consistency and everyone pulling in the same direction is really important. One of the things that I find sometimes trips up our team members is if they don't feel like everyone is doing the work, right? So if they do the work to sort the composting in their area, but then they see the custodial team take that green bin and throw it in the trash compactor, right? That immediately sort of takes the wind out of the sails of the effort. And so having that consistency across the whole team and the different stakeholders is really important. So last question for you, Chef. If you were giving advice to another culinary leader at another venue who wanted to implement back of house composting in this case, what would you say to them?
I could spend a day talking about this, but really understand your leadership, understand what they're capable of doing, really, working with Denali on the tools and the systems that are in place is so easy and just such an easy handoff. But it's knowing who your team members are, knowing who your leadership is before you implement it. Roll it out at proper timing. Rolling it out in the middle of a chaotic storm is not the right time to do it. You got to kind of ease into it, make sure everything's in place. And then at the end of the day, know that you're doing a really great thing. You're helping to save the planet, right? And we know that in our industry, waste is huge. I feel proud in the way we're chiseling away in the NASCAR world at composting and doing the right thing. It makes me feel confident enough that almost any chef out there can wrap their hands around a program like this, as long as they buy into it, first of all. And second of all, they have the tools and systems in place that Denali could provide. And most importantly, the leadership's intact and you have a clear-cut vision and plan to execute.
Yeah, I love that. One of the things I love about the special events division that oversees NASCAR, you all have a slogan that I think is something like do what you'll say you'll do. So once the team decides that they're going to commit to something, it's really something that gets prioritized across the board. So Jeff, thank you so much. None of this would be possible without you and your teams. I really appreciate it. And I think we're going to have some time for Q&A. Katie, I'll hand it over to you.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Layla from Denali, and Mary and Chef Mac from Levy, and Esther from NASCAR. We've answered most of the questions, but a couple that I'm just going to say out loud so that y'all have the answers to. Layla, a lot of these questions were for you. If you want to share the answers, I can go ahead and ask them. First of all, there was an anonymous person asking, is this open to members and non-members of the Green Sports Alliance? And yes, of course, Denali is not limited to only who is associated with us. They are a global organization. And if you go to their website, you can see their map actually with where all of their facilities are. There are so many of them. It looks like a Verizon AT&T map. And then, can you define DPAC? That was one of my questions initially as well.
Yeah,
Layla?
so great. It was a great question. So I put a couple of links in there for those who want to learn more, both a link to our website that explains more and a 1.5 minute video that kind of shows you how it works for those of you who are more interested. But really simply, it's a separation machine. It has a lot of filters and screens. So all of the waste that we would pick up, the food waste that we would pick up from any of your sites, we would bring it back to our facility. And there was another question that asked about, for this size facility, how many DPAC machines do we need? You don't need any at your site, which, you know, I know is daunting to anybody thinking, how many machines are you putting? Where am I going to put them? Do I need to learn how to use them? You don't have to do any of that. All of those machines sit at our site. We pick up your food waste, just like your trash hauler would pick up your landfill waste. We would pick up your food waste. We take it on our trucks back to our facility, and we run it through the DPAC machine. So what that DPAC machine does is all those screens and filters it has, it takes out all of the non-organic matter, and it's been trained to do that. And then it takes all of that, and there was another question, several of these had to do with the DPACer, of what happens to all the stuff that gets screened out. So if it's not organic matter and goes into the organic pile and it goes through the filters, what happens to the rest of that? We recycle as much of that as we can. So, you know, we're in the world of not putting things in the landfill. That is entirety of our job. So as much as we can recycle out of the rest of that, we absolutely do. And we are very diligent about that.
Thank you, Layla. I also, if you guys notice, we have Leah Harry on the call. I'm going to put her email in the chat right now. She is the Senior Director of Emerging Segments at Denali. So if any of you are looking to get a hold of Denali post webinar, she's your girl. Leah, if you want to say anything, go ahead.
Good morning or afternoon, wherever you are in the time zones. I'm excited to be a part of this group. I think we have a lot to offer when it comes to helping with the circular economy. So reach out to me. We are excited to grow with you and look forward to working with each and every one of you.